Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Goodrum show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, okay, so it's part 2 of the Glenfiddich trilogy. Now this is where it all starts to get a bit interesting, I can tell you that. And a little bit expensive as well. So, as I said last week, I've copious samples of Glenfiddich that were entered into the World Whisky Awards, enough of which to do 3 episodes of the show. Obviously, last week we looked at the entry level range, the 12, the 15, and the 18. And this afternoon we're gonna up the ante somewhat, shall we say? So without too much further waffling, I'll introduce this afternoon to the lineup. Right, okay, so we're kind of upping the ante today and upping the age statements and upping the price tag quite considerably on last week's tasting. We'll be kicking off with this. It's a no age statement. It's the 125th anniversary bottling. Originally, I believe, released in 2012 for the travel retail market. It commemorates obviously the 125th anniversary of the distillery, or the beginning of distilling at the distillery, which I think was in 1887. Not a cheap bottling, so I believe currently retailing for somewhere in the region of 150 quid. So nice one to start off on, I think. The next one we'll be looking at is this one. It's the Glenfiddich 21. I think the first time I encountered this was in America a number of years ago, when it was called the Havana Reserve, because it's finished in rum casks, and I remember it being really sweet. So it's been a while since I've tasted that. Since then it's changed its name to the Grand Reserva. Don't know why they changed the name, but there you go, that's what they did. And this little baby, the third one, this is bottled, unlike the other two which are bottled at 40%, this is bottled at 43% and is the 30-year-old. Now, I mean, that's got a fairly, this, going back to the 21, I mean, that's about 115, 120 quid. So, again, not exactly a cheap whiskey. The Fiddich 30-year-old, though, well, you can probably triple it. That's coming in at almost 500 quid. So, expecting great things from that. And you may wonder what this last little one is, if given that's 30 years old. This is called the Glenfiddich Ultimate, bottled at 46%. I believe a 38-year-old whiskey. Obviously not the oldest that they've ever released. I think they've released, I know they've released a 40-year-old, so I've tasted it, and I believe they've released a 50-year-old. But this, I believe, went to auction in Hong Kong, I think, for about £2,500, and I think I'm right in saying that there's a certain wine merchant in London, and a very expensive wine merchant in London, that has this on at £6,000 a bottle. Well, it's not really a bottle; it's a fancy decanter and all that kind of stuff. So probably really worth about £2,500. So that will be the final whiskey that we'll be looking at, and well, we'll see if it's worth the price tag then, shall we? So, anyway, let's start off with the relatively inexpensive whiskey, the 125th anniversary. Right, okay, I was slightly wrong earlier. This is actually not this is actually not. Well, you mangle my English there, and I haven't even had a drink yet. This is actually bottled at 43%, not 40%. But anyway, let's see what the nose gives us then, shall we? That's a nice nose. It's very Fiddich. Maybe a little bit more perfumed than sort of the younger age statements. It's obviously, it's a nice fatting. It's got some dusty oak. It's got some maturity. It's all American oak. It's no sherry. It's got some lovely crisp Speyside fruit. It's quite minerally, quite hard. and that's the sort of top notes of the whiskey. Underneath you get the sort of sawdusty, the apricots, the, like I said, quite perfumed fruit. Little bit of pepper, but overall the impression is, should we say, more towards the youthful side, but with that sort of element of older spirit, and it's certainly, the longer you smell it, the more the older spirit's coming through. A little bit of dried fruit, and it's really complex. A little bit of orange rind, some lovely sweet barley. That's a really nice fatting. It has to be said. You know, you've got, like I said, you've got the core of the older spirit, and then you've got some younger spirit to add vibrancy. So, palate. That's a chewy mouthful, really smoky. That has just reminded me that I think that this was a bit of a throwback whiskey when they were actually using a bit of peat at the distillery, and it's very smoky but sweetly smoked, and it's not too heavy on it. I mean, although the smoke is very upfront, and you initially get that, but then you get some nice crisp younger fruit, some minerally notes, and then finally the dried fruit, the slightly dusty oak kind of coming through. It's a really nice progression. The smoke kind of lingers and is kind of always kind of there, but like I said, after that initial hit of sweet smoke, the spirit starts to come through quite nicely, and it's all really nicely balanced. So 150 odd quid. Yeah, okay, I can kind of see that. It's quite complex. Whether I would pay 150 quid for that, I'm not too sure about. But you know, I think sort of all in all, that's a really impressive bottle. Okay, on to the 21-year-old, bottled at 40%, and as you can see, the influence of the rum casks is quite obvious. It's got a nice shimmering golden colour, so let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Not sweet as I remember it, to be honest with you. I do remember it being, you know, almost sickly, but this has got quite a lot of raisinated fruit. It's got that sort of herbal character, that almost kind of young rye-like character. It's got some nice vibrancy. It is relatively sweet. It's got toffee, it's got a little bit of coconut, some caramel, quite creamy, soft. There's a bit of Fiddich fruit there underneath all of that. A little bit of sort of minerality, some citrus, a bit of, you know, almost marmalade-y orange. But it's definitely the rum cask that's the taking the centre stage here, and it's like I say, it's a very appealing nose. It's not as sweet as what it used to be, which, from a personal point of view, I think is a good thing. And like I said, it's got this almost kind of herbal rye intensity, which is unusual. Wasn't expecting that. Palate. Whoa, that's lush. Ooh, that's a big malt. Again, we're all talking about the cask to start off with. It's toffeed, it's treacly, it's dark honey. again, not overly sweet, and it's not as sweet as I remember it. It's got a nice balance to it. The crispness of the Speyside fruit certainly comes through on the finish. And I don't think that actually needs to be more alcoholic than it actually is. It has just about the right amount of freshness. I think if you probably bottled that at 46, it might be a bit too alcoholic, certainly on towards the finish, because all the while the sweetness is kind of lingering and it's sort of sitting there in the sort of sides of the mouth, and it's just so nicely balanced. It's really impressive. Okay, you can argue you're not getting a huge amount of the distillery character. There is some fruit, and like I said, some citrus and some minerality, but it's all about that sort of juicy, raisinated, dried fruits, toffee, a little bit of licorice, dark honey, and and like I said, a lot less sweeter, lot better balance. Really do like that. I think that's pretty impressive stuff. Right, okay, so let's move on to the 30-year-old. Incidentally, before I do taste this, I thought you might like to know, when I originally tasted these blind for the World Whisky Awards, I gave the 125th anniversary 8.5, which is not a bad score at all. I gave the 21-year-old 8.9, which is not too bad at all, and I'll obviously let you know what I scored this at when we finish tasting it. So let's have a look at the nose, shall we? That is the business. I mean, where do you start with a nose like this? It's obviously, you're getting the age. You're getting the sawdusty oak, huge chunks of luscious, slightly pollinated, slightly floral, maybe a little bit of orange blossom honey, but it's huge weight of honey. Oh my god, that is incredible. Lovely, moist, juicy spices, sweet spices, some dusty, creamy American oak, but all the while it's just a huge honey. I mean, 500 quid. Wow. Yeah, this is definitely worth it. Oh, that's just lusciously deep. And again, it's all American oak. There's a little bit of granitiness, but you've got those sort of moist, alcohol-soaked apricots, a little bit of plum. Spices are getting slightly chocolatier, a little bit more gritty possibly. Getting a little bit of a herbal note now, again, that sort of almost sort of herbal rye-like note. As it kind of all settles down, and it's almost like, you get a big wave of oak and honey to start off with, and then that sort of like settles down and you start to get the fruit. I mean, that is stunning, absolutely stunning. And this was of all the over 21 samples that I know I won't tell you, because that'll give the game away on this one as well. I'll taste this one and then I'll tell you what I scored these two. But I love this. This is absolutely beautiful. This is just my kind of whiskey. Big, honey, juicy, aromatic. Wow. Palate. Damn, that is bloody good. I mean, it's just like the nose. I mean, again, it kind of It's probably got more of a granitiness, certainly on the finish, but it definitely starts off with the sawdusty old American oak, large amounts of honey, the sort of it's like citrus honey, manuka, orange blossom, and also this kind of thicker, sort of almost set honey-like character. Softly, slightly sweetly spiced, but really fresh on the finish, but not too fresh. I mean, again, it's as well balanced, I think, as the Fiddich 21, in that you're still tasting the sweetness, the honey sweetness, right on the edges of the tongue, but the rest of the mouth is cleansed by the combination of the alcohol, the minerality, the citrus. Oh, it's just really cocoa-y on the finish now. Certainly on the aftertaste. Lots of lightly coffee, but lots of that sort of almost dusty cocoa powder. That is a big mouth-filling whiskey. That is stunning. Absolutely stunning. And finally, is this going to be the ultimate whiskey? We ask ourselves. Let's stick our nose in the glass then, shall we? It's edgier, actually. Not as lush, not as sweet. It's got more of that kind of grainy coffee and herbally kind of rye-like note. And yes, there's some dusty oak, but it's a lot tighter, a lot edgier. Still quite spicy. I mean, there is some mature American oak there. Obviously, not quite as sawdusty. It's a little creamier, possibly, more caramelled. A little bit of smoke. I mean, it's stunningly deep. But I will say, even now tasting it again, I gave this 9.6 and I gave this 9.4. I mean, you know, you can argue that 0.2 of you know, a scoring point is not a huge amount, but you know, when you're talking about sort of when you're certainly above nine points, I mean, you know, that's when you're into the realms of the stunning whiskies, the sort of like, you know, that are just incredibly brilliant, and those little points really do matter. I mean, you know, I've never given anything a perfect 10 at all. I mean, I don't think there is such a thing as a whiskey. I don't think there is a perfect 10 whiskey, or certainly if there is, I've never come across it. And I think sort of like from tasting again, I mean, this is stunning, but that is just lush. I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's just like, oh, and you know, this has just got more of an edginess, more, you know, I mean, it's still absolutely stunning, it has to be said, and a very different beastie. Like I said, a lot more herbal, a lot more of those sort of coffee grains. It's harder, but the depth is just sublime. It really is, and palate. Quite a dry finish, but nonetheless really very, very impressive. Starts off with a lot of the sort of molasses and treacle, chocolate, a little bit of coffee. Again, you think, well, this could be quite sweet, and then you just get all this edginess, this sort of minerality, there's coffee grains, tight wood tannins. But again, you know, the balance is absolutely sublime. I mean, where in say the 21 and the 30 to a certain extent, the finish was sweet but offset by the minerality and citrus notes. This is kind of the sweetness is more offset with the grainy oak tannins, and it does leave a little bit more of a drier sensation. But again, you know, it's got so much of that sort of treacly licorice and that kind of stuff that it again, the balance is just absolutely sublime. A little bit of smoke on the aftertaste, again quite herbal, with, you know, like I said, that sort of almost kind of young rye herbalness, or middle moderate aged rye herbalness, I probably should say. But you know, 2,500. I mean, to be honest with you, like I said, I prefer the 30. I mean, I don't doubt that this, and it is a stunning whiskey. I mean, there's no shadow of a doubt that that is an amazing whiskey. But for me, the 30-year-old just kind of edges it because of that sort of, it's more lusher. Anyway, I'm kind of wrapping up before I've wrapped up, aren't I? So let's wrap this up properly, shall we? Right. Okay. So let me eulogise about these properly then, shall we? I mean, okay. Yeah. I suppose to a certain extent you can argue that most distilleries, if they leave their whiskey in a cask for long enough, you know, it's going to be damn good. And I don't know. I mean, like I said from the last time, I mean, Glenfiddich makes good whiskey. It's good quality whiskey, and I think obviously, I mean, even the 12-year-old is really enjoyable for what it is, and I think that's the way you have to look at it. But coming back to what we tasted this afternoon, the 125th anniversary, yeah, it's kind of nice. It's well balanced. It's got, you know, a nice, like I say, nice balance. You can taste the elements. You can certainly smell the elements of both the younger and the older spirits that have gone into it, and it's just, you know, very good vatting. So yeah, not too bad at all. 21. I would say that's a lot improved over the last time I tasted it. It's not as sweet. I think the balance is a lot better. I mean, I remember buying a small 20 cl bottle, and all I could manage was like one glass of it, you know, well, one glass, and I couldn't have a second glass of it. It was just far too sweet. It was almost like drinking an after dinner liqueur to a certain extent. So I think, you know, the 21, I think, is probably the, you know, the most improved, shall we say, of the bottlings. The 30-year-old, well, I think I probably said a fair amount about that. I mean, you know, sublime. That is just my whiskey. You know, I love old dusty spays with oodles of honey and spice and all that kind of stuff. You know, that is just so me. You know, so my kind of whiskey. So you know, that's just stunning, absolutely stunning. And the ultimate, well, for me, probably not the ultimate. I mean, although, like I was saying, you know, it's a very good whiskey. Really enjoyable, really complex. Again, amazingly well balanced. Didn't quite have the lusciousness of the 30, but I think, you know, this, you kind of like have to kind of take it on its own merits. And it was nice to see that, you know, each of these different whiskies had their own personality, and I think that's what you're looking for in a whiskey, and that's what you're looking for from, you know, a master blender, is to sort of like give each of the bottlings, you know, a personality of their own, rather than, you know, maybe just being a kind of a progression, I guess. So so anyway, there you have it. You know, that that's this is the second part of the trilogy. Like I said, I have got a third episode which is waiting in the wings, so to speak. So anyway, I think it's about enough for this afternoon. Enough waffling. Maybe, you know, you'll get a chance to sort of taste one or two, or maybe three of these, or even all of these whiskies at some stage, because, you know, if you ever get the opportunity to, you certainly should do. So, but anyway, that's enough for this afternoon. So all I have to say is, grab your 30-year-old, good drumming, good afternoon.